All right, guys, we are still in the basement, but if you're noticing, you can actually see me for one. And then number two, you'll notice a very cool logo, which I'm probably going to point the wrong direction, but hopefully I get it right here. That says Minor League News and Brews up here. And this has been a brainchild for probably about, I don't know, 3 years here. The pandemic kind of stopped it. Have done some of these, recordings on the sly, but you know what? This year I decided to jump straight in, and what this is going to be is, you know, 30 minutes of baseball and a little bit of brews. And what I'm going to try to do is, the local breweries that are around PNC Park, as well as, some of the breweries that are around where the Pirates minor league teams are, and, any minor league game I might happen to visit. Going to be doing some reviews on some of those, but I thought that I would start out with doing a review of each minor league team, and where else to start would be, you'll notice right here, something else that's different. We're going to low A Bradenton. Don't worry, I still got the Yins hat here for everybody. I'll be putting that back on right after that. But welcoming to the show for the first time, we have Ben Pokorny, and Ben is the new voice of the Bradenton Marauders, coming from by way of Mizzou, Arizona State, Kalamazoo, and now he's down in Bradenton. Ben, how you doing today, brother?
Good. Thank you for having me on. You mentioned the places I've been. I think Kalamazoo, Quincy, Illinois, Mizzou, Arizona was a nice weather, nice place to be. But probably the first time I'm calling baseball in the best city in the world that I could think of to start for a low A town.
Yeah, and I mean, the bonus is that right now, I mean, I can see where you're at, and I guarantee you've been like taking some trips over to Pirate City,
Yeah.
and and been checking out some guys and getting to know some people, and getting to mingle with a lot of big names that are down there right now. But definitely a very cool situation to be in.
Yeah, I was over at Pirate City, actually, that you mentioned it, from about 11 a.m. to noon today, just watching some live ABs. It's a frenzy there at times with the viewing to the public, but try to sneak in for an hour a week just to watch infield or whatever it was, and got treated today. They had live at-bats, and on field one, group one was Kutch, Reynolds, and Cabrian Hayes, all just rotating in and out for about 45 minutes. So just sitting there and being able to be a fan and just watch these guys swing was probably the best part of my week so far.
Yeah, and what people don't know is when you walk into Pirate City, I mean, I think they still do it. I think I saw Florida Prospect Report put up there that they still hand out like the sheet with all the guys' names and numbers on it and everything like that. Because we've even talked about, I mean, it's not the same as football when they take off their helmet, but some of these guys, when they take off their uniform and they're in their street clothes, or they may have a different hat on, you may be like, and they don't see the number, like, who is this guy? So it's something, very good to see. And that's what it's going to be a lot for anybody that takes in a minor league baseball game. The first thing I really usually do is you either get the program, or I have the MILB app, and I pull that up and I look at the names and numbers and try to get to know as many faces as I can, especially in Bradenton now with the different stuff that goes on there now, where you have the FCL right there, and it's something that your predecessor and Spencer Smith, we had talked about before. Is that that's a pretty cool thing, because you can be pulling guys at the last minute from the FCL and inserting them into the game, and people are trying to figure out. I mean, sometimes you may be trying to figure out exactly who this guy is, or just if you know some things about him, getting yourself acclimated to that. So have you been doing studying the program a little bit for the Marauders down there?
Yeah, 100%. I think the big difference to being in the Northwoods League, where I was previously, is you don't have a ton of roster turnover, and you have your 40 man, and that's about it. There's the only guys you got to familiarize yourself with. One one thing I've really tried to focus on is just being a student of the organization in general. Just kind of figuring out, okay, who's in the FCL, who's up in Greensboro, who's with the Curve, who's in Indy, who's kind of on that border, kind of a two-way utility man, flipping back and forth between Pittsburgh and Indy. Talking about just going around and seeing people randomly. I eat lunch and dinner every day, Pirate City, and guys taking their uniform off. It's the same thing for me too. You see guys walking into the dining hall at Pirate City, and you're like, is that O'Neal? Is that, is this Stresny? It's almost surreal. And talking to friends and family, like, yeah, they sit down, they eat, they watch TV just like the rest of us, and I think it's really cool seeing that humanizing side of a lot of these players right now during spring training.
Yeah, and we won't know, the Bradenton roster until a little bit closer here. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, I read everything from Pirates prospects. Yeah. I always say that I study the Fangraphs roster resource page. On the daily, I go and I pull up Baseball Reference and see who was in the FCL last year, and try to figure out who's going to be the guys at each position. Have you seen yourself doing that at all?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's we don't know our roster until, if we're lucky, March 2nd, probably all the way filled out. I actually talked to JJ, Marauders manager, today for the first time. Just more in depth about, the season coming up and stuff like that. My biggest hope, and something I think we'll see happen in terms of something I think is a real sure bet, is having Termar start down here for the summer, or for the season rather. I think you saw Termar grow a lot at the end of his spell here with us last season. Started out hitting 111 and then ended up slashing some really good numbers towards the end. As a broadcaster, obviously you want the number, the first round pick in the organization from last year to start with you to get people excited about Marauders baseball. And talking about watching those FCL guys, with the World Baseball Classic rosters coming out, you've started to see a lot of these guys that were playing in the FCL last year in Bradenton that are making the jump and playing in this World Baseball Classic. And I think it's a good chance for fans of the organization to see some of these guys that may have never heard of. A big one for me, Alessandro Urcolani, born and raised in San Marino in Italy, playing with Team Italy in the World Baseball Classic, had a 1.39 ERA and about 30 innings of work in the Complex League last year. I think a 1-0 record, had one save in about 8 appearances. So in terms of those Complex League guys that are hopefully going to make the jump, that's the big one that sticks out for me. He's a bit of a dark horse. I haven't seen him on any blogs, any fan posts, whatever, but I really like that, the talent that he has. 18 years old, came here to FCL, to Pirate City, when he was 16. So a pretty cool story in itself.
Yeah, and that's where you're breaking maybe a little bit of news here, but also just giving us a little bit of an insight of a player that, like you said, that really isn't out there. And when you think about, getting the rosters put together, it's not only, the Bradenton roster, it's what does the Greensboro roster look like? What does the Altoona roster look like? I mean, I feel like that once you get up to Indianapolis, it gets to be a little bit more set, but even there's some position battles there of, will a guy drop down to Altoona, which they could then drop a guy down to, Greensboro. And it's a trickle down effect. And it's the same with promotions. It's looking to see, everybody's saying, I see Termar, on Fangraphs, he's listed as a second baseman in Greensboro. And you already took that question away from me there a little bit, because that's what I was going to ask is kind of what you thought and what you've heard, just because to me, I don't know if I've seen him get enough time, just either in like the Complex League, and even the call up to Bradenton last year was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah. I obviously I haven't heard anything official. Haven't, had any full on conversations with the people that make those decisions. But like I said, and like you were saying, I think it'd be really good just to see him get a few weeks of at bats in here in Bradenton, because he got hot towards that end of his spell here with the Marauders, and I think that'd be a great way to catapult him up into high A and into double A, whatever the ceiling might be for him this year. And just to have a guy like that to get butts in the seats, to get people tuning in to watch Marauders baseball, for me personally would be huge. Obviously, for the good of the organization, I want to move Termar up as high as we can and get him as close to playing big league baseball as soon as possible. But if we had him in Bradenton for a few weeks, I wouldn't be the most upset person in the world, just to get to sit here and talk into a microphone every night, watching the future of a hopeful world championship team down here at Lecom Park for the Marauders.
Yeah, and another guy that kind of pops into my mind that people are kind of maybe pushing towards Bradenton is Young-Suk Shim, who we had just signed. I know that Po Yu Chen, and it's just comparing for me the international type players and the competition that they had faced. Maybe getting some time in the FCL, even if it's just a few games, just kind of almost like Po Yu Chen was in his first year, and he absolutely dominated. I think he did not walk a player in the FCL and was striking out like guys left and right, and may need that, and it might not be in the rotation from the beginning.
Yeah, I think you kind of saw that with Quinn Priester at the start of last year, starting him in Bradenton. Obviously, it had a little bit to do with kind of a rehab work, but throws 3 innings in Bradenton, ends up being part of a combined no-hitter in his only ever outing as a Marauder, and then shoots his way up to AAA last season. So I think the ceiling for a lot of guys is there to where I don't think it would necessarily hurt their progress to even just to build up some confidence to start them down in single A. And just kind of see where they compare. You're talking about the international players, just their level of competition. I think that's the biggest thing, along with, guys straight out of college versus guys like Termar straight out of high school. How ready are they to take at-bats against 95, 96 miles an hour 6 days a week for 132, or depending at what level you're at, 150 odd games.
Yeah, and I mean, I know some of these guys have, held the wood bat and prior to showing up to Pirate City or whatever, but I mean there's some guys that are coming straight from playing with the metal bat and maybe not, like you said, maybe not facing the level of competition, and with the restructuring of minor league baseball, and it's something I'll keep talking about just at least the next couple of years, is that prior to this, that the high school guys would have been down in the FCL or what was the Gulf Coast League at the time, but the other guys would have been either in Bristol, West Virginia, wherever. So now, I mean, even in the FCL, you're getting some guys that like a Tamar Johnson who would be facing guys in the FCL that could be at the same level as in Bradenton. It just might be that it's just a numbers game as to where they can fit guys on the roster.
And I think with the deep, pool of prospects that I like to think that we have in the Pirates organization, I think the future looks very bright with the amount of talent that we have amongst all 4 levels of affiliated baseball. Kind of gives you that ability to pull guys from the FCL. And for lack of a better term, the FCL to me has become the Appy League. It has become, low A short season rookie ball, to give guys that chance to play every day, to see good competition. I think talking about before the restructuring of minor league baseball, which we don't have to get into, but I think that the Gulf Coast League, FCL, whatever you want to call it, the complex league, was not as well respected as I think it should be now. Because I think guys are getting much more quality appearances, much more quality bats against good competition there. And I don't think I would be entirely shocked to see guys like Chang go to the FCL, start there, come to Bradenton, make their way up to Greensboro, and who knows where you can go from there.
It's definitely, adjusting, and Ben Cherington has shown that he will be aggressive with some of his promotions. We've seen a lot of 18-year-old players in Bradenton, whereas before, I mean, that would be an absolute shock unless they were, and it's not speaking bad about these guys, but unless they were like, a Wander Franco or a, somebody like that, that wouldn't be the type of promotion. But, Ben's been kind of aggressive with that. But the one that I'm kind of curious, I saw him play in Bradenton last year. Unfortunately, when I got to see him play, it was just with the bat. I also wanted to see him pitch, but he wasn't scheduled to pitch then. And that's a two-way player, still a two-way player right now in Bubba Chandler. And a lot of people are
Yeah.
saying if he would just focus on the pitching, it might be possible to start out in Greensboro, but it kind of seems like that the bat is not going to go away just yet.
Yeah. First off, Bubba's a guy that when I first got here, everyone within the front office, ballpark staff here at Lecom talk about just class act, great dude, awesome person to be around in the Marauders organization. And more to the playing side of things, I think I definitely think he's early enough in his career where you still kind of can experiment and see, can I get some good ABs and can I get that average up? Am I slashing a number where, it's sensible for me to keep hitting and trying to get some time on the bump as well? Whether it's his choice to take it in a certain direction or it's an organizational choice that I don't know of. But regardless of whether he's, going to stick with the two-way, focus on the bat, focus on the mound, I think it's an exciting guy just in terms of his flexibility, because that's a type of player that I don't think we have at a lot of levels within the farm system, is a guy who, if you're struggling on a 6-game road trip and you got him DHing, say, hey, how's your arm feel? Can you get in the bullpen and give us maybe like 2 innings tonight up in the Carolina League or up in Altoona? And I think the flexibility is something that gives him an edge for the time being, and whether or not he decides to focus on one aspect of the game or not, time will tell. Hopefully by April 7th, we'll know what that path looks like.
Yeah, because the one thing that I kind of suggested, and I know I'm just a guy. I sit in my basement and I watch as much minor league baseball as possible, as much Major League Baseball and different stuff. But as a person who, didn't make it far in my baseball career, but was a switch hitter at one point. But at one point in time, I was told to focus, and I wasn't even pitching, and was told to just kind of focus on the one side. Well, Bubba's on the bump. He's switch hitting. He's got to focus on all that kind of different stuff. So my one suggestion was, okay, Bubba, which side of the plate do you feel most comfortable on? and maybe just stick with that, because I mean, you see the power there and you see the potential. I mean, a couple of times, saw him just like launch it at Lecom into the, I guess to the bullpen over there. And
yeah, right out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the power is absolutely there, and you could see that the skill level's there. So, I mean, that's just definitely going to be something interesting to watch. Is there anybody else that you've kind of like thought of that maybe you're looking at in Bradenton or in the FCL that you've kind of like been keeping your eye on a little bit?
Not anyone in particular. I think, I am like everyone else. I think I get caught up in, Termar, Andy Rodriguez, talking about those guys that are at the top end of that top 30 prospect list. And I think that's the best part about the FCL and single A baseball in general, is that we really don't know who's going to be our guy this year. We could have someone that we picked up from a Frontier League or an American Association spot come in here and be a dude for us for 132 games. I think that we know those top end prospects that more or less will be, deposited in Bradenton or Greensboro, Altoona, Indianapolis. But for me, I'm trying not to focus too much on, I don't know what to call it, hoping for who's going to be here and who's going to be on the roster, and more so just kind of going with the flow. And regardless of the fact we're going to get 132 games of great baseball. I know JJ and the staff are really excited for this season after what was an upsetting end of the season, to say the least, for a lot of people that were here last year. I've heard plenty about that since I made the move down here, and the mini rivalry possibly starting with Dunedin just after what happened last season. But I think that for me, I'm just trying to keep an open mind and just be excited, because at the end of the day, I don't care who's out there on the diamond. I get to sit and be part of a great organization and announce 132 games of baseball, and that's the dream.
Yeah, it's definitely, and for people that don't, I mean, I do have, MILB TV. I don't have the, MLB TV, even though it's, I guess, now going to be combined to a degree. It's something here
Yeah.
now coming up. And that's going to be something that people are going to have to adjust to, or it might be a bonus on top of it for some people.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a bonus. Sorry to cut
Oh,
you
no, you're
off, but
good,
just
man.
to dive deeply into that real quick. So for MILB TV subscribers, MILB TV is still going to be there. It's going to be its own thing. The recent change and announcement that's come out lately is just adding on those minor league games to someone's MLB TV subscription. So I think it's a great opportunity for people that are maybe just Pittsburgh Pirates fans to become Altoona Curve, Grasshoppers fans, Marauders fans, and dive deep into what we have down here because, some tough seasons up at the big league level the past few years, but there's so much to be excited about from top to bottom, from triple all the way down here in Bradenton.
Yeah, 'cause that's the one thing I've noticed in following the Pirates for as long as I have, being a minor league baseball fan since back when I was in middle school. It's just been part of my life, and so like I knew who was being taken in the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft, but it kind of seems like that's been trickling upward towards Pittsburgh a little bit more. That getting upset about when we lose 11 guys, in the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft. And a lot of those guys that, I kind of, had pegged for either, maybe, and I hate to even say repeating a level, because I think that with the restructuring of baseball now, that repeating of a level, it needs to like kind of lose, some of like the stigma that happens. I mean, some of the times
I would agree.
Some of the times, it may have that, but other times just because, hey, we bumped this guy up here when he was 18 just to see how he would do. And, he needs another year, and that's not a bad thing. But there were some guys I had pegged for possibly that, guys I had pegged for, possibly in the Greensboro rotation. Joe Elvis De Rosario's one of the big name guys that I had out there, but there's going to be those opportunities, for other players. The one thing, that everybody, to me, like I was focusing on in Bradenton this year, and I just kind of wanted to just discuss it for a little bit, is that, is the catching situation. We've been kind of blessed in the lower levels for the past few years. 2 years ago, Endy was in Bradenton. Then he was, in Greensboro the whole way up to Indianapolis. Abraham Gutierrez was when he came over from the Phillies organization, and then he was in Greensboro last year. We've had a lot of, Henry Davis coming through Greensboro and different stuff like that. And now I looked, and it's not that I see Giovanni Planchart is a guy that I think I wrote an article. Anybody go back to Inside the Bucs basement and search it. I wrote a triple threat article about 3 guys that I was keeping an eye on. I think when he was in the FCL. So it's not that the talent isn't there, but then I like looked and I'm like, man, I don't know where this, there's a couple guys there, but I'm thinking, Axel Plaz, my boy, hopefully is in the FCL this year. But I
saw him today catching live ABs over at Pirate City.
Oh man, that's what I'm looking forward to when I'm down there in a few weeks here. But yeah, I'm thinking he's only 17. I'm like, maybe that's a little bit too young to get him to push up to Bradenton. But I mean, is there still? Do you feel there's still depth like throughout the entire system? And this is just catching, and because that's what Ben Cherington has kind of been, his mantra has been from the top to the bottom is having depth.
I think the catching depth is 100% still there, and I equate that to the fact that I think our pitching depth, top to bottom, is a strong suit of this farm system right now. More so, maybe at the top end of things, looking at AAA with guys like Quinn Priester up there, and good Quinn Priester story later if we want to get into that. But I think that goes hand in hand. I wouldn't call it just catching depth. I think battery depth. In general. And I think it's a really hard thing to do. And I think that's why Mr. Cherington does such a great job with building this farm system, is that this draft nowadays is only 20 rounds. I think that's a big thing that gets overlooked a lot now at the farm system level, is that it's a lot harder now to pick a guy out of the draft that you think would be a really good option maybe not in a week after he gets drafted, but give him a year and see how he does, at the single A level. I think that across the board with, you talked about Endy and Henry Davis, those are two guys to me that could be big league catchers themselves, and starting alongside each other, kind of maybe like a Wilson Contreras, Miguel Montero Cubs deal. Back during their World Series teams, David Ross, I guess, thrown in. They had 3 catchers. Jeez, what a team. But I think that it's a position that also takes a toll on the body, and that is not fun to play in July in Florida sometimes. Just guessing. My time in Kalamazoo, we had a guy catch 19 games straight.
Oh, geez.
And I think he just went to a 7-Eleven and just bought 2 whole pound bags of ice for himself after that stretch was done. So depth at the catching position, I think, isn't something necessarily that has to be full of guys that are projectable into the major leagues within a 2 to 3 year time span. For me, I think just having catching depth throughout a farm system is good for the development of pitchers, and just in terms of guys like Endy and Henry Davis, who we expect to be, playing at PNC Park in a few years, to take that load off of them as young guys trying to catch a game every day. I think it's really important to have people around them that can say, we're going to start him on Sunday. You've just caught 10 games in a row with one off day mixed in between. You're going to get a day off. So I think that whether it's a projectable guy or a guy that's just there to take an odd game here and there, that in turn helps everyone else in that catching unit for me personally.
Yeah, and I always see catching as a pretty important thing within a system, especially when you have, your on-field general in Derek Shelton is a former catcher, the head of the minor league. I think he's the director of catchers and of players and coaches, and instead of being called, the minor league GM or whatever they used to call it. And John Baker, it's a lot of a focus on within that. So one name I was going to mention as the backup, and I have it written down here. Yeah. It's Nick Gimello. He was with Rutgers. He's a guy who had played some outfield, a little bit of catching, different things like that. And so, he kind of reminds me in some ways of guys that caught in, Greensboro last year in like a Grant Koch, who a lot of the people within the system talked very highly of how they worked with those pitchers. So, catching to me, as a, somebody that's who were all my favorite players growing up were Gary Carter, Mike LaValliere, Don Slott, skipped over Jason Kendall. I
was going to say Pirates legend himself.
I don't know why I skipped over that, but then once you get back into it, it's like Francisco Cervelli and Russell. I just kind of love those guys. So but yes, that's where my mind kind of goes. But you know what, Ben, this has been a great talk this time, and there's so much more to talk about. So all that means is that we're going to have to do this again sometime, brother.
Fine with me. I'd be happy to do it.
And for anybody that doesn't, you got to go give Ben a follow on Twitter. Follow the Bradenton Marauders on there. Go subscribe to MILB TV if you haven't yet. At least download the app and listen to the radio broadcast and everything. Because
First pitch, all games on MILB first pitch.
Yeah, so and that's something that I do from time to time, is just toss one of those games on and just try to listen to it. So, but Ben, it's been great talking to you, brother, and can't wait to do this again.
Can't wait. We'll get you on a broadcast when you're down here.
Oh man, I'd be looking forward to that.
Go Bucs.
Go Bucs. All right, guys, that was Ben Pokorny, and we're up against it here. But I also wanted to talk about the other thing that I kind of had mentioned, which was everybody's wondering what Craig's been sipping on from behind this Pirates can right here. And for me, the people at Creekside Beer were nice enough to. I was looking for some Big Storm, some Magnanimous Brewing, some Motorworks, different places like that. But in the few weeks I'll be down there, I'll be, looking at that. But for right now, I can't really say it too well. And I don't know if you could see it too well. It's a little bit of a Jaya-like hazy that I've been sipping on here. And I've got 4 of them here. And I've taste tested all of these prior to this. And I do my rating on something that I call the Waboba, the weighted based on batting average beer system. And I have to do it that way because I'm not a big stout drinker. I'm not a big porter drinker. So I got to, or sour drinker. So I got to bump their scores up a little bit, give them a little bit of an advantage. And I got to take the lagers and the hazies down a little bit. So I have my scores written down here. And this one right here is for the Jai Hazy. It's a double dry hopped IPA. And the scores all go from a 400 batting average is a Honus, a 300 batting average is a Clemente, the 200 batting average, everybody's going to know this one, it's the Mendoza. And I'm sorry to one of my favorite players during the 90s, I made you my 100, and that's Kevin Polkovich. I loved him my senior year of high school and freshman year of college. So it was between him and Dale Sfame as to who I was going to name that one after. So this right here, it comes in at a solid, 350 for me. But with the weighted thing, the pale ale has come down the 50 points. So it comes down to an even 300. That's a Clemente for me right there. Another one, it's the first time I tried this one. It's the Jai series. It's a Spanish cedar. And that is another IPA here. And so on this one was, I didn't like this one as much. This one fell around the 325 range. So it'll get bumped down to around the 275. So it's right below a Clemente, but it's definitely above a Mendoza. And these other two, I hate to say, I've been down in Florida a bunch of times. Jai is my go-to beer when I'm sitting by the pool because it's their low-cal one, and it's not because it's the low-cal; it's because it's also the low ABV. So you're not. It's like you're drinking a lower, almost like a light beer, but it's got that heavy beer flavor. This one right here is going to be tough for those breweries out there that I'm going to be visiting to beat. This one right here, I have coming in at a 375. With the adjustment, it's coming in at right around a 325, and the original, the granddaddy of them all, and that's the Jai. The Jai is the heavier, the punch in the face one of the Jai, and to me, go out. My camera, I can't see it too well, but the Cigar City, look for that sign right there. This one right here, I'm going to give it the 3.75 as well. And so basically, guys, whenever you're visiting anywhere, go give a lot of these guys, not only the brewery's great, but you got to basically say to them right here, you got to play this song for them.
A pitcher of beer, a pitcher of beer, let's order another pitcher of beer. That pitcher of beer should come over here. I love that pitcher of beer.
And once again, I'd like to thank the guest we had on today, the new voice of the Marauders, Ben Pokorny. Next week, we'll be previewing the Greensboro Grasshoppers. Trying to decide whether I'm going to do that one by myself or if I can, talk somebody from Greensboro or somebody from the prospect sites that coming on, but have been doing, as much research as I can on who I think might be in Greensboro and going over to Creekside Beer and getting some more beers from the Greensboro area. Until next time, this is Craig Toth from Bucs in the Basement, starting off here, Minor League News and Brews. Also, go to our partners at Shop Yins, go to Creekside Beer, and go get yourself some Cigar City.